I met Ozzy when I was around 18, and he came into my father's office for management with Black Sabbath. So I was 18 when I first met him.
How does a woman who once ruled the stage, the screen, and the chaos of rock and roll end up at 72 facing the deepest heartbreak of her life? Along her path, Sharon Osbourne has had to fight sickness, betrayal, fame, and the loss of the man she built her life around. It's not just a story of surviving, it's also a story of love, scars, and strength. Don't miss this. Just stay tuned. Childhood in the House of Arden. Sharon Rachel Arden was born in 1952 in London. There were no lullabies or soft hugs around her. Instead, there were walls that echoed with power. Don Arden, her father, was one of the most feared men in the music business. His enemies saw him as cruel. His artists saw him as a kingmaker. But his family saw him as a storm. Nobody hugged each other in that house very often, and silence was stronger than any hug. There wasn't a lot of laughter in her life. People were yelling, doors were slammed, and contracts were being signed late into the night. For some kids, going to bed meant feeling safe. Sharon had to stay awake all night and listen to footsteps in the halls that were colder than any winter. From a very young age, she knew that if her father loved her, it was only if certain things happened, and those conditions could not be met in that house. That's when tragedy struck, just as she was getting old enough to need love the most. Sharon's mother died in a car crash when she was only 6 years old. There were fights and brief times of comfort one day, and nothing the next. There is no going back or second chance. Overnight, the only comfort she had ever known went away, leaving her alone with a busy father and a house that echoed with her absence. She would always remember that silence. Sharon's loss of her mother when she was so young left a scar that was deeper than any wound. It wasn't just sadness. It taught them the painful lesson that love can end in an instant. She grew up with a lot of money and in a world of power that most people could only dream of. But none of it filled the void that it left. Later, she would say that her house had money, power, and contacts, but not much that a child really needed: safety, kindness, and the chance to be open and vulnerable. By the time Sharon was a teenager in the 1960s, she felt alone all the time. She studied power while other girls found company, music, and their first loves. She saw how deals were made, how fear was used as a tool, and how you had to learn to stand your ground before you could laugh in order to stay alive. Being soft was not an option in that house. She had tests every day, and failing meant being squished by her dad's shadow. The fights between Sharon and Don Arden got worse as she aged. He wanted people to be strong, loyal, and obedient. That's what she said: resistance, questions, and her own will. When they fought, it was loud and nasty, and the quiet would last for days. But deep in those fights was the truth about what was being made. Sharon wasn't being hurt. She was getting better. She knew before she was an adult that fame didn't come for free. It required giving up things like safety, family, and sometimes even happiness. She saw how quickly the business could destroy people when she saw desperate artists and cruel leaders walk through her dad's office. She learned that having the ability wasn't enough to be successful. It was about being tough, about being able to take hits and still stand tall when everyone else has given up. When Sharon became an adult, she wasn't naive anymore. She was already tough and had skills that most people don't get until much later in life. Her scars didn't show that she was weak. They showed that she had lived through a world that was made to break soft people. She knew exactly how fragile love, comfort, and power could become. She learned how to deal with power as a child. But being with Ozzy meant going into exile, putting love over heritage, and going into a storm that would test how strong those scars were. Sharon's boldest gamble. It was hard for Sharon Osbourne in the late 1970s. At age 27, she had lived her whole life under the strict, watchful eye of her father, learning how power worked, how names could change in an instant, and how to stay alive meant being the first to attack. She had the guts, the knowledge, and the business connections to take over his empire. But fate brought her someone who would make everything different. That person was John Michael Osbourne, better known as Ozzy. People used to worship him as the booming voice of Black Sabbath, but now he had been thrown out after years of chaos, addiction, and hurting himself. He had a weak body, a broken voice, and a bad image because of articles that made fun of him and said he was done. Most people in the business saw him as a threat, not a chance. Sharon didn't see the shaking hands or the messed-up picture, though. Others saw a lost cause, but she saw a giant who was hurt. It was both dangerous and brave of her to make that choice. She chose to be with him as a partner in every way, not just as his boss. That decision split her world in half. It was an insult to her father. Don Osbourne built a family business and told his daughter to keep it safe. She turned down marriage, money, and safety instead, and went straight into exile. She put love over her family history by picking Ozzy, and the price was very high. She was cut off, and the empire she had been raised to receive had left her. The years that came after were filled with war. The money quickly disappeared. There were a lot of bills. At night, he fought his addiction, and during the day, he had to deal with scorn from people who thought Ozzy would never rise again. Sharon put her future at risk, gave up her comfort, and risked her health because she thought this man, who had been written off by everyone else, still had something to offer. Failure would have ended both of their lives. Sharon wasn't made to give up, though. They planned trips, built trust with record labels, and opened doors that had been shut in their faces before. She became a nurse when he was almost killed by an overdose, a strategist when contracts needed clear thinking, and a guardian when chaos seemed like it would swallow them up. When she finally married him in 1982, it wasn't an easy marriage. There were scars on their bodies to show that they had made a promise that wasn't made in a fairy tale church. Things started to come up for her work. When records like Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman came out, they not only brought back a career, but they also brought back a legend. Each victory was proof of Sharon's hard work that no one saw. Every sold-out show had a night spent in the emergency room before it. Behind every #1 song was a morning when she had to pull her husband from the brink of failure. She managed a business, was married, worked as a nurse, and was a mother, all at the same time. No one really noticed how heavy her load was. The victory she had fought so hard for came in the 1990s. With the start of Ozfest, Sharon made more than just a trip. She set up a metal kingdom. Unknown bands were able to get a stage. People who had given up on rock found fire again. Ozzy came back to life as the Prince of Darkness, and Sharon planned it all, even though she was often out of sight. Many people couldn't imagine the sacrifices that went into the wins, though. What everyone else saw as success, Sharon saw as scars. It turned out well for her bet. She brought back to life a man that everyone else thought was dead. And in doing so, She created a legacy that would rule metal for decades. But saving Ozzy and seeing him through substance abuse, chaos, and being made fun of was more expensive than anyone knew. Sharon had already shown that she could deal with leaders and critics. Sharon had already mastered the boardrooms and backstages, but now the world was going to ask her to do something even worse: let millions of strangers into her home, into her family, and into her private chaos. And when she did, fame would cost her more than any deal ever could. The price of fame. Sharon had already shown that she could fix a broken job, save her husband from ruin, and keep her family together through storms that most people wouldn't make it through. But she wasn't ready for what happened next. The Osbourne house was opened to the public in 2002. The Osbournes were like an earthquake on TV. They turned a crazy family into the most popular show in the world. Sharon wasn't just a boss or a wife overnight. A lot of people watched every week to see the fiery matriarch, who became a figure and a brand. People in the crowd thought it was funny. Sharon's sharp tongue was its own highlight reel. Ozzy's mumbling turned into a joke. The kids' temper tantrums turned into entertainment. People thought they were seeing comedy gold when they laughed at the swearing, the strange pets, and the sudden reactions. Many people found it funny that there was a very different story going on inside that house. The cams didn't just record moments. A fight that should have stayed between two people turned into an episode. Fights stopped being fun. There was no longer a clear line between real life and acting. Sharon later said that TV gave them a voice, but it also took away their quiet nights. What everyone else called reality was really just the gradual loss of limits that no family can handle on their own. Heartbreak was going on behind closed doors, but everyone laughed on TV. After that, Ozzy said it was the worst choice he had ever made. For Sharon, it was a reminder that success comes with a cost, and this time, that cost was the peace of her family. Still, she was very attractive on TV. People all over the world loved how honest she was. Soon, Sharon was sitting behind the judge's desk on the X Factor UK, America's Got Talent, and later the main stage of the talk. Casting directors lined up to see her. She became well known again because of how funny and honest she was here. That woman was honest but fair, angry but caring, and she seemed like she had seen too much to be fooled by fake things. People believed her because she never faked. Moreover, TV is a changeable master. What makes you stronger can also break you in an instant. In 2021, an argument she had on the radio turned into a storm she didn't see coming. The pushback happened quickly and was made worse by the cruel echo chambers on social media. Overnight, Sharon went from being a well-liked mother figure to a public enemy. The news stories labeled her. Contracts were broken. A lot of strangers turned on her. It was almost like the wave would pull her under. Behind the scenes, the woman who had carried rock stars and fought cancer sat alone at night, unable to sleep, scrolling through comments and wondering if all her hard work over the years had been for nothing. She told him later that she really did believe her death was near. It was a shocking comment for someone who had been sick, betrayed, and beaten up. This time, the blow wasn't from illness or addiction, but from how people saw things. It was the kind of enemy that you can't see, but that hurts just as deeply. Scars of the body and soul. Sharon Osbourne was dealt a blow in 2002 that she couldn't get over. She had been afraid of hearing those words since she was a child. Colon cancer. The news came at a time when her family was very popular. Millions of people were laughing along with the Osbournes. The truth was very harsh behind the cameras. Chemotherapy made her weaker and took away her hair, hunger, and strength. She spent her nights hunched over sinks and her mornings forcing a smile on her face so everyone would think she was strong. Her promise kept her living. She kept telling herself, "I can't leave them without a mother, not like I did." There was more to it than just staying alive. Getting by was important for her kids. When her body wanted to give out, that one thought held her together. But cancer wasn't the only fight ground. In December 2003, Ozzy almost died in an ATV accident. His body was left with broken bones and had to be kept alive by machines. Sharon limped through the hospital halls to sit next to him, her hand shaking but steady on his. She was still weak from the chemotherapy. At the same time, their kids were becoming addicted. Jack's fight took over him, and Kelly's spark turned into dependence. Sharon was in rehab at 3 a.m., begging for her kids' lives while she was fighting for her own life. A strange reality show was seen by everyone. It was the end of the world inside that house. The truth was blood, scars, and whispered prayers. But the cameras caught the comedy. Sharon was the last person who could protect herself from getting cancer, her husband dying in the hospital, and the end of her children's lives. She lived, but living left marks on her. Dr. S told her in 2012 that her family background carried another danger, but she refused to let it kill her children the way it killed her mother. She picked a double mastectomy as a safety measure. It was hard to get better, and the scars are still there. Sharon never hid them. She was honest, showing everyone that scars were not a sign of shame, but of strength. Many women who were making the same choice found strength in her honesty. Not all marks were caused by sickness. In 2016, someone betrayed her and broke up her marriage. Sharon said it hurt like a knife going through her chest when Ozzy's cheating was made public. She quickly left, feeling sad. It wasn't easy for them to get along again. It wasn't the same as forgetting to forgive. It meant picking to build again on damaged land. Sharon had been there for Ozzy through substance abuse and betrayal, but nothing could have prepared her for the day when his body turned against him. And the worst tragedy of all was yet to come. The final descent. One fall at home set off a chain of surgeries, rods, and screws that held together a body that used to rule arenas. The backbone that held Ozzy up through decades of chaos finally gave out. Sharon did more for him than just being his wife or manager. She became his nurse, guardian, and quiet witness as he fell apart. Every move hurt, and each step was unsure. He was still the Prince of Darkness to everyone else, but when they weren't around, he was a man who was losing the fight to stay alive. What Sharon already knew, Ozzy himself said, "The last 4 years have been terrible." This time, it wasn't scandal or addiction. A man who used to have a very loud voice was caught on camera shaking. Sharon, on the other hand, sat next to him with her still, and her hand locked over his. If his statement showed how weak he was, her presence made everyone see how strong she was. Then there was a big sickness. Sharon and Ozzy both got sick, pulling their already weak bodies to the edge. Sharon later said she was afraid of leaving him alone in the dark, not of dying. The fear was different for Ozzy, but it was still very real. "I'll go with her if she does." Their love was put to the test, not in chaos but in weakness, showing that loyalty could still hold strong even when things were bad. Time had taken away almost everything by 2025. But Sharon knew she could still set one last fire for him. The last time Ozzy played a show was on July 5th in Birmingham, the city where it all started. Sharon had planned it like a general planning a war, with doctors ready to go, contracts being watched, and every risk being thought through. "This is all I have left to give," he whispered as he left. He gave it. The broken but burning words in each song became both a crowning and a funeral. Sharon whispered, "Just let him finish," as she clenched her hands together in the wings. After 17 days, on July 22, 2025, Ozzy's roar stopped. Sharon sat next to him and whispered, "You roared until the end, my love. Now, take a break." It rained and shook at his funeral, and thousands of people chanted his name. Sharon stood there with pride, but she told herself, "That was the loneliest moment of my life." Through scars, loss, and unshakable love, Sharon's story reminds us of strength in tragedy. Like, share, and subscribe, and don't miss the next video popping up on your screen right now.